Hey everyone, welcome to Keynote Day for the Hygraph Studio beta launch. Now, you may have heard some rumblings about the new beta coming. We are incredibly excited to share with you the new editing experience for Hygraph, the Hygraph Studio. The Hygraph Studio is our new experience for working directly with Hygraph. This combines features for both editors and developers, and in the coming days' events, we're going to be talking more about those features specifically. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about developer experience. We're going to talk about the improved API performance. We're going to be talking about efficiency for devs, and also some things around the new asset API. On Friday, we're going to be talking about editor experience. Editors will get a new design that is geared towards simplifying the editing of complex data, improved performance for that UI, and creating additional context for navigating between content structures. But today we've got a bit of a larger topic to talk about. We don't want to just focus on the new and amazing UI, but we want to talk you through our thinking about where the company is headed and also where the industry is headed. We want to talk about the future of content and the future of content management. As content becomes increasingly the actual asset driving business, CMS tooling comes with a whole host of new requirements, from specific feature sets all the way to overall architecture itself. But beyond that, there's also been a land rush in the field of AI. We want to talk about how that's going to affect the content landscape as well. So today we're going to focus on three areas: how content itself becomes that business driver, how that impacts the tech stack for businesses, and how AI can be used not to replace content creators, but to support them. And to talk about these topics, I'm incredibly happy to introduce our speakers today: Hygraph CEO Michael Lukaszczyk and Hygraph CPO Mario Lenz. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you very much, Brian.
Thanks, Brian, for having us.
I think let's kick it off with the topics. As you mentioned, there's a lot of trends happening in the content management space. We want to kick off the conversation with one trend that maybe is not completely new. It has been around, or we could observe this happening in the early days of Hygraph as well, but it's gaining more and more significance and more traction. You mentioned it before in the introduction already. Content is becoming the business driver, and what this means is what we observe in the market is that content is actually becoming the product and not just a means to promote a physical product or in information offering around it. And that means that product teams and companies nowadays, what they really build is content-rich applications, and we see those use cases more and more, in particular because we've always been very developer-centric, offering a lot of tools to build such applications. But to zoom in a little bit, what do we mean actually with content-rich applications? So what is a content-rich application? Think video, think Netflix, Hulu, Apple TV, think sports, Peloton or Strava, think information hubs such as Crunchbase, or think educational platforms such as Blinkist. All of those are really real digital products, very interactive, non-static experiences, and content in this use case is the product, the actual asset that is being sold to the customer and distributed to the customer. And all of those fantastic applications, really, they have different requirements on their content management platform, different requirements on scale, functionality, features. It is no surprise that us with Hygraph being very product-centric for many years, many of those companies I've mentioned before are actually Hygraph customers. And we want to talk a little bit about what are the requirements, for these use cases. What does the content management platform need to provide? And in a way, it is a bit different than CMS functionality you would expect for a marketing use case, for a marketing website. The scale is much different. So first of all, you need really strong support for rich content structures, a complex schema. You need a very strong API offering, usually much closer, even I would say, to how you would query a database, how you would read data from a database, how you would write data into a database. The functionality itself, with a large scope, but also the non-functional aspects of this API. So not just what can you do with the API, but how and how much can you do with the API? What's the performance? What's the throughput? How many requests per second can you send? What's the payload you can send to those APIs to really allow building those interactive experiences? You also need strong permission management in the content management context, not just for the UI, not just for the CMS, but also for the API, because you want to bake in and implement business logic for your end users of the platform. So with strong authorization mechanisms, you can express a lot of business logic. And lastly, we believe that for these use cases in particular, you need a user interface that is very data-centric, not page-based. Digital products such as a video-on-demand streaming platform or the workout applications of companies such as Peloton, this is not page-based thinking. This is interactive experiences. This is not static. So in particular, from your content management platform, you don't want a page builder or a page-based abstraction of the platform get in the way.
Yeah. Actually, Michael, let me step in here, because when you speak about page builders, I believe CMS vendors will have to specialize in the very near future. So what do we mean? So there is this area of marketing content with landing pages and blogs and event websites and all of that. So highly visual content, but the content itself is actually different to what you just explained. So the content itself is relatively simple in terms of structure, relatively simple in terms of, say, technical requirements. Also, what we would call content velocity, so the speed of changing this content, is much lower. So, and that is what visual page builders have been made for. Marketeers can use them to create professional looking, stunning website without needing any coding skills or dependent on technical expertise. And there's definitely a need for that. Yeah, no doubt about that. The other area is actually, Michael, what you already explained right now. So the content-rich areas, exactly with the aspect you mentioned, with a high degree of complexity, a lot of variety in content, speed of change. You need these API access. And maybe what I would add to your list would be, you definitely need something where you want to ship this content to many, many, many different platforms. So yes, of course, it's the web browser and it's the smartphone, but it may also be virtual reality glasses, or maybe it's the screen in my car, or maybe in the future it's a screen that's attached to my fridge in the kitchen. Yeah, all of that. And that is, I think, is exactly the promise of headless CMS. In the future, of course, these two extremes are a little bit like black and white. And yes, there is some overlaps and some gray areas, but still in the future, we believe there will be this specialization, because it will be very, very hard for a single vendor to be really active in both areas, also in terms of must they serve and all of that. And Hygraph definitely is in the headless CMS space. Actually, I'm very proud. Bryan already talked about this. This is exactly what we will be launching, what we will be speaking about in the coming days. Speaking about developer experience, editor experience, how the brand new Hygraph Studio improves the experience, helps to speed up, makes it very easy to engage, even though it's a complicated matter. And actually, now that we're talking about it, I would say I would actually add a third element or a third player to the game, and that is commerce. Because when you think about what commerce systems have been built for, it's mostly the transactional part. Yeah, you see a product, you put it into a shopping basket, you do the checkout, you do the payment, you monitor the delivery, done. So basically, bring the product from the store to my home. But many of the products, and you mentioned many of them in the beginning, Michael. I mean, think of Peloton, Apple, Nike, Sennheiser, or maybe some coffee brand. Many of these products are very storytelling, brand experience. When you think about a coffee maker, maybe they want to explain how they plant their beans and how they harvest and how they roast the beans and how local communities benefit from that business all the way until the beans are actually finally end up in the supermarket. And for that, you definitely need something else. In a pure transactional commerce system, you need a CMS. And I think these two will also blend so that there will be a very, say, a kind of synergy so that CMS is used to elevate the commerce experience.
Completely agreed. We see this a lot, and there is partial content management baked in a couple of commerce platforms, but they usually fall short. It's not their core business. Most commerce vendors focus on the transactional aspect that you've mentioned. So really, if you want to elevate your e-commerce experience, you should consider adding content management to the mix. So thanks a lot, Mario. I want to point out also that we have a lot of integrations with commerce platforms already readily available in our Hygraph app marketplace. So if you're having an e-commerce case, we encourage you to try out Hygraph today. And one more note, I want to announce that soon we'll be publishing also another session together with one of our partners, Marcus Lorenz from Datrix. And Datrix, they built really elegant composable commerce solutions with Hygraph in the mix, and Marcus will guide us through a little bit how they do it, how they transform old technology stacks, old stacks, legacy stacks into modern business foundations. So stay tuned on this as well.
Nice. So with these industry shifts and the new tooling requirements that we've been talking about, page building versus data-centric content, commerce work, all of this, what do you think, Michael, are the impacts it's going to have on the actual technology in the space?
We see definitely a big shift and different architectural patterns. So probably a lot of people in the audience have heard of the term composable before. It's old buzz. The term has been around for quite a while now, and it's quite relevant. And what does composable actually mean? It means that companies nowadays, when they transform their tech stack, they want to think in modular architectures instead of a one-size-fits-all solution. So very often referred to as the old world monolith. And companies are looking for ways to migrate off of monolithic infrastructures into a more modular infrastructure and modular architecture, because it comes with a lot of benefits. You can, with a composable stack, you can simply adapt to new technology trends much quicker, especially around emerging technology trends. Think AI or think recent or new digital channels that may gain more popularity now, since augmented reality or virtual reality. With a composable stack and modular architecture, you can simply add tools that help you delivering experiences to those platforms as well, much quicker instead of a monolithic architecture. So this is one of the big shifts we're seeing as well. I would say it is still early, but we feel the trend every day. And oftentimes, modern tooling and new technology around your stack, also composable enablers, help you also bringing legacy technologies or legacy tools into the internet, into the web. We see very often that the product information management systems are being used in the stacks of the customer, but very often also very old software, 20, 30-year-old, so really legacy tech. It comes usually with an API, but it's not an API that you would want to expose onto your website when there's Black Friday and you have millions or hundreds of thousands of people accessing. It's not scalable. It's not built for that. So with also because of this, we at Hygraph invest into tooling, kind of our opinionated answer on the problems of composability, because composability comes with a new set of problems that you have to integrate all of the tools together to allow things such as exposing your legacy system so they can still keep modernizing your tech stack. You can still keep it there, but expose it to the internet. And this is really why we at Hygraph, we pick an API-first approach. We have very strong GraphQL foundation on the API layer that is not only allowing you to distribute content onto any platform, it's also allowing you to source content and data from any platform in your stack as long as it has an API. And Mario will probably can probably provide more information on that in a second. But I want to call out also one session that I'm really excited about in this launch week is we're going to have a panel with some of our best engineers and product managers, and we will discuss peak performance, how we've achieved really fantastic performance benchmarks with our API offering. And we'll talk a lot about scalability and as well the new regional management server deployment. So I definitely encourage you to watch the panel. It will be full of interesting insights.
Yeah, and specifically, it's about scalability really at global scale, across the globe, no matter where you are, not just in Europe or North America, but all over the place. Yeah. And by the way, Michael, now that you mentioned this non-monolithic architectures or composable architectures in terms of, say, the software itself, the tech stack, we also believe that maybe a little bit further out, but there is something similar on the pure content arena. So we see that content itself is, and let's be honest, always will be stored in different silos. Yeah, content, there is different pieces of content owned, managed, governed by different people, different parts of the organization, maybe even external companies, so you don't even own it. And you still want to bring that into a unified user experience. Let me pick a very simple example, one thing that probably all of us are familiar with. Imagine you want to go on a vacation. You go to this typical hotel booking websites. You want to book a hotel for the family. So what do you see? You see the hotel offering, of course, with all the description of the hotel, what it is, and the facilities, and the rooms, and all of that. You see digital assets like videos and pictures of all the rooms and nice places, and maybe the spa of the hotel and all of that. You see information about the surroundings, places to visit nearby. Maybe you see information on how to get there, traveling information, weather data maybe, when it's a good time to visit the place. User reviews, ratings by other people who had spent some days before, had spent their vacation there, maybe on special occasions like honeymoon or whatever. And of course, you see pricing and booking information. So is it still available? And you can easily imagine that all of that information, every little bit, sits in different silos. And let's be honest, it will always be. There's no way you can blend that into one single unified source. Again, let's take the weather example. You don't even own the data. It comes from the weather. And that is exactly what Hygraph has built Content Federation for. So a very unique way in Hygraph to bring that data in dynamically, still deliver it via a unified API call to all the front-end applications. But going forward, I could very well imagine that we have to think of something like a content graph. So like a unifying structure that provides access to all these content silos, both in terms of the technical access, so I have the right channels and authentication in place and all of that, but also in terms of, say, a unified glossary and kind of, semantics of what does that bit of information actually mean? And that is, I think, where kind of the content stack might see something similar to the Mac and composable architecture that we've seen in the software itself. That happens also in the content arena. And I briefly mentioned, Content Federation just now. Again, some topics that we will address, I think, early next week in some dedicated sessions where we are talking about extensions to our remote sources, to selected commerce tools that we have integrated, for example, for simple authentication integration, so that you really make it super simple to access that data.
Fantastic to hear. I think, and I really believe that a lot of time is completely wasted on integrating those multiple data sources together. If you want to build your product at the end of the day, a lot of time goes just into plumbing under the hood. And this is something the content management platform should help you with.
Absolutely, yeah. Avoid the need for a customer-built migration layer. I think that would be kind of unofficial statement, maybe. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no one wants to write glue code. And speaking of things that no one wants to write, sometimes content editors have things they don't want to write too. And there's been a lot of buzz and frankly, probably hot air recently around like AI capabilities in various CMS platforms for content platforms. So what trends are we seeing and what kind of steps are we taking to position Hygraph around AI?
Yeah. Thanks. Great question, Brian. And yeah, you just said hot air. Yeah, and I would sometimes I would second that. However, of course, there is also real demands in the market and real demands by customers. And that's what we are focusing on here at Hygraph. So we don't want to build yet another copy and paste tool that brings, a proposal from ChatGPT into another screen. There's no value in that. Instead, we are focusing really on, and when we talk to customers about that, focusing on, I can give 3 examples where really true business values, we can deliver true business value. So one is, how could we help customers to be more productive? How can we make them faster, building applications faster? For example, by way of conversational interfaces. Help me to understand the documentation. Guide me in building a complex thing. Or maybe build the schema completely on your own, just by way of a conversational AI bot. Yeah, so that would be the productivity area. Specifically, maybe for people not so familiar with headless CMS, not so familiar with GraphQL, new to that space, coming more from the traditional CMS area. The second aspect I would see in the creativity part. So Michael in the beginning talked a lot about these very, very popular brands. And I would still think, well, putting all the messaging into the hands of an AI, we aren't quite there yet, because in the end, you still want to own very exact messaging. But of course, you could use an AI to kind of overcome writer's block. You don't need to start with a blank screen. Why not start with something that the AI proposes, and then you fine-tune it and to adjust it to your specific language, tone of voice, and brand messaging. And the last thing, the third example here that I'd like to bring is something that is kind of, actually, I would say impossible today, or impossible without AI. And that would be, let's call it hyper-targeting. Imagine you build these product descriptions like, what did you say? Netflix, Peloton, Sennheiser, or maybe the coffee bean example that I brought up. You wrote that content, but now you want to customize it. You want to target it for a very special audience. Maybe you want to brand it to a developer, to an engineer differently than to a marketer, and again, different to a designer, and again, different to a salesperson. And that is, of course, something that AI could very well be used for, maybe to the extent that it's even personalized. So your target market is size 1. We are working on that already. I would say, frankly, it's a bit too early to give you to provide any details or even ETAs on that. I can highly recommend, stay tuned, follow our newsletter, follow our social channels, and you will hear about the things that will be coming in Hygraph regarding AI.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Mario. In particular, I'm as much as excited about the coming AI capabilities to Hygraph as I'm excited about the Hygraph Studio launch. I completely agree that one of the challenges is to cut through the noise and to identify the use cases that really bring additional value, integrating with language models. But we have pretty fantastic ideas. So really stay tuned. Thanks again, Mario. With all of that, I have to say that we really believe that all of those trends will reinforce each other. So the product use cases, modern architectures in a composable way, and that more and more content is coming from external sources instead of just one source. So we need to think of opening up those content silos. But also in particular, AI is already became relevant at a light speed, I would say, in the last couple of quarters. But with this week's release and the releases that are on the horizon for the next couple of months, we really believe that Hygraph is well positioned for the future of content management. And our studio release of this week is one of the many milestones achieving even better position in this market. So we hope you enjoyed the conversation so far. I for sure did. Please try the new studio today. A lot of hard work has been going into it. I'm pretty sure you will enjoy it, but we're also super excited about all the feedback that we'll get from you. So thanks a lot. Give it to us. Thanks a lot. And over to you, Bryan.
Yeah, so we'll dive in. We'll take some questions, but like Michael said, check out the beta. And also, if you have any questions or any feedback you want to give directly to us, join our community at slack.hygraph.com, and you can send that our way very, very quickly and easily. All right. So I'm super excited about where the industry is going and where Hygraph is going. But I do want to open things up for our audience. So be sure to post some questions over in the chat. We're going to be discussing those questions as well as some other things here coming forward. They can be about the future of content, as Michael and Mario were just talking about. Or if you want to talk about the studio that just launched yesterday, we're open to those questions as well. And to kind of start us off, Mario, for those of the people in the audience that obviously have heard that the studio is here, how do they get the studio? And also, do they have to use it right now?
So getting into it should be very simple, relatively simple. So you just log into your Hygraph app, and when you're on your what we call project directory page, so you see the overview of your project in the just above that area, top right corner, you see some tiny little toggle that allows you to switch between classic and studio. And that is very intentional because, as we said, and as we discussed already, Studio, we are fully aware it's still in beta. We are fully aware we don't have full feature parity yet, but we wanted to get it out as soon as possible so that we can collect as much feedback as possible, as soon as possible, and fix and optimize and all of that. And by the way, we just opened it yesterday and we already got a ton of feedback and marvelous feedback. Some of them, little glitches that maybe we missed, some of them great areas of improvement. So really, really, let's continue on, please. We're looking for more on that. The way it works, I would love to refer this as a kind of opt-in. So feel free, use it, try Studio. You can always go back. It's a zero risk attempt. You can always go back. Maybe you don't like it. Maybe you're more proficient with a classic version. Maybe you come across a feature that still, isn't there yet. I don't know. Let me schedule publishing, for example, just comes to my mind. It's just not there. We didn't achieve it yet. And that's why you can always go back and forth when you're working in a team. Even some of your team members can use classic, some can use Studio. So there's no, it's not a one-way door, if you want to call it that way. So at a later point in time, that's probably more towards summer also, that will change, and will be slightly and step-by-step increase that a little bit more. But for now, it's exactly that. Feel free, opt in, try it out, give us feedback, and then if you want to continue with Studio, if you feel more confident, or if you come across a feature that you're missing, go back to Classic at any point in time.
Yep. And also tell us in the community when you're running into these issues too. And you can go to slack.hygraph.com. There's actually a Studio beta feedback channel there. We're taking all the feedback in. Product managers are in there responding to every request coming in. And as Mario said, there's already been some really good feedback that I'm really excited for us to start actioning. And we want this to be a collaborative experience over the course of this beta. So I'm really excited to see what the community comes up with. Speaking of other questions, in the actual keynote, you briefly talked about this idea of the content graph.
Yes.
But when we're talking about that, what do you actually mean by it? And don't we usually stitch all this kind of stuff together in the front end?
Yeah, of course you can do this. Yeah, if you're building an application, you can in the front end stitch all the various data sources and applications that you're using. So you can stitch them together yourself. But what you're actually doing then is, well, you're building your own middleware, kind of integration middleware. And that, to me, it's always important. It's not only building it, it also means you have to deal with a lot of things. I mean, you have to maintain it. You have to think about performance. You have to think about, the edge and delivery and CDN, about security, about later updates, whenever, one of the tools that you've been integrating in that middleware, when one of the tools changes, all of that. Yes, you can do that, but a lot of our customers, actually, for them, this is not their core business. If let's name a customer, let's name Dr. Oetker, for example. If I'm Dr. Oetker, my key business is to bring our products and our, to our digital experiences. I don't want my team to spend time building this generic middleware and basically repeating what others have done before already. And this is exactly where Hygraph can be very, very helpful, because it still allows you to build all of that with the capabilities that we have, in Hygraph itself. And towards the front end, you just have one single API that doesn't change. You still have your consistent front end applications. So that should help a lot. And that's actually our target. We want to remove the need for a middleware.
Perfect. All right. I've got a couple of questions in the chat right now. I'm going to start with Emily asking, does the studio include the new asset management system, or is that currently just on new classic projects only?
That is independent. So we realized actually that might be, and it's a great question. Thanks, Emily. It might be a little bit confusing. So it comes as part of the studio launch that we are seeing now. So with the technical release that happened yesterday, with a keynote that we see here today, with all the events that are coming in the next week or even months. Yeah, there will be a series of these events. So in that sense, the new asset system is part of it. However, whether you use the new Hygraph asset management system or the more classic one is actually independent of whether you use the classic UI or studio. Maybe the simple thing, and maybe we should share that later on, is a kind of think of a 2x2 matrix. Yeah, so you can have both versions of the front end, so classic versus studio, and you can have the classic versus the new Hygraph asset management system. What it takes right now, or when it becomes effective, is the new Hygraph asset management when you create a brand new project. That is the status of now. So when you have already an existing project, when you clone an existing project, when you basically continue developing, you will, for the time being, still work with a classic asset management, and later on, we will provide migration tools and all of that will then help you to go to the new Hygraph asset management. But for now, it's for any new projects. Even when you when you log into Hygraph now, go to classic, start a brand new project, that would be with Hygraph asset management. So that's more the question, not so much which UI you're using.
And the important thing on that is we're keeping parity of data between classic and studio. So if we went to the new asset management system and you were trying to use it in classic and you didn't have access to it, it'd be a problem. So that's why it's available in both. And then, the migration is really what's going to be the driving force behind getting all the old projects under the new asset management system. And as a note, as a programming note, I don't have a slide for this, but next Tuesday, Tim will actually be giving a workshop, a live stream workshop on the new asset management features as well. So stay tuned for that. That'll be next Tuesday. And then Emily has seconded Tim's question from a little bit earlier as well, asking about any new features that, actually Tim's later question on any new features that maybe aren't yet in like the nice sizzle reel or anything like that we can talk about in terms of what's in Studio.
So I understand Tim's question more like, what kind of features are provided or are shipped with Studio now that were not available before? I mean, there are things like the field outline, for example, Command K. I mean, a very, developer-friendly tooling specifically, which actually I learned about. I mean, I'm not that typical key user persona for that, so I wouldn't use it. But just a lot of these kind of things which help to make it just, again, what I also said earlier, productivity. Help me to get faster, help me to get my job done faster. There are some things around that, but the complete list is also we shared that in another channel. It was also in the quick intro video, but that maybe was a bit quick.
Yeah, and there'll be more features we're going to talk about tomorrow and the next day. We're going to go in depth on all of that. Tomorrow we'll be talking about the developer experience features, which will highlight some. Look at that slide, which will highlight some of the things like the asset management system, but also things like the new API playground and some of the performance gains that we're making in the API and regional management server. And then on Friday, we'll be talking with our editor experience product manager to talk about things like we've got the new component table of contents view that makes complex data much easier to comb through, especially talking about, Mario was talking about earlier in the keynote about the content as product, right? Content as product is a big deal. Oftentimes we get very reusable in our data, and no matter what, that makes for a much harder content editing experience. And so this kind of table of contents view for those component structures, the very, very nested layout, is meant to make more efficiency for our editors as well. And then we've got another question coming in from Elvar. Are there any plans on having a custom dashboard or something customizable for the homepage of the project, similar to like the project statistics in Classic? Is that something that's coming?
That honestly, as of until 1 minute ago, no. Yes, I have a yes and a no here. So the no would be there had not been any plans. Definitely, we will consider, optimizing that project dashboard for the specific user. So, for example, when you're an editor, you definitely want to see different things than when you're a developer. And maybe when you're the project manager of a large-scale project, you still want to see yet other topics. But that question, I mean, I would love to get in touch with you, Elvar, on that and actually talk to us. Yeah, let's have a chat on what do you mean what's kind of customization? What kind of features do you want to have there? We are fully aware that right now, it's a very generic thing in Classic, the project dashboard, and it provides a great overview of the project, but maybe that information is not exactly useful for any type of user. And we are absolutely open for any proposal of optimizing that. So I would more than love to chat about that.
And I will go ahead and use that as an opportunity to put the banner across the bottom again to say, if you have direct feedback, we're 100% listening at slack.hygraph.com in the studio beta feedback. And Elvar, that's great feedback and something that we can definitely talk about deeper. Andreas asked in the chat, which kind of user type did we have in mind when we were developing some of these features in Studio?
Yeah, so it's really, I mean, remember the intro we had were the kind of content-rich applications that we're talking about. So it's really, I would say it's two key user personas. One is the developer. I'm the developer. I'm tasked to create a new project, to set it up, to create the schema, to build the integrations, to embed other APIs, maybe use content federation to even dynamically fetch content from somewhere else, all of that. So there's one key user persona. And the other one is the content editor. So yes, that schema is there. And now I have to, just think of a product like, let's again cite the same example, Peloton, Sennheiser, whatever. Yeah, I have my headset, whatever, headphones, and now I want to describe, okay, this is now this specific type of headphones, and I want to now give all the features and specifications and descriptions and images, assets, all of that. So that's more the content editor, and then the other one is the developer. These are always our key user personas. And actually, you can see it referring again to the two upcoming sessions. Yeah, we do have developer experience tomorrow, and we have editor experience the day after. So that is exactly our internal thinking, and this is also how our teams think and work.
Yeah, I think Mario, you touched on earlier, again, this idea of efficiency. And so the kind of guiding light towards how we're making things better for both of those personas is all about efficiency, right?
Absolutely. That's also why, that's more an internal thing here, but really our teams are organized that way. So we will be in these sessions, there will be a product manager and a developer in the developer experience team. And there's a product manager and a developer from the editor, because that's exactly because they need to smell, feel, breathe that kind of feeling of how these kind of key user personas, how they tick, how they work, what their challenges are, all of that. Yeah, that's why we are organized exactly along these two different personas, as we call them.
So I'll go back just a hair, and Tim posted a question about the content graph. So does the idea of the content graph have any idea around content duplication and worrying about content duplication across multiple channels?
I mean, generally speaking, when I think about the content graph, say as an extension of the existing content federation that is already in place in Hygraph, I don't see any content duplication in the sense of, I copy content from the original source to Hygraph, because that brings a lot of problems, invalid data. What do you do when the data changes frequently? I mean, just the example I was talking before. Yeah, you want to book a hotel, you want to know about the availability. I mean, the moment you copied it, it may be outdated already. So it doesn't make any sense. So it's really dynamic. Of course, it could mean that there are some technical means in the sense of caching. Yes, that totally makes sense. You don't want to fetch that data every time, live. And for example, we see that with product information management systems, specifically when they are a bit dated. Yeah, they are embedded in the manufacturing and supply chain and all these processes, but they are not really ready for the internet. So what do you do? So in terms of performance and APIs and all of that, that is where you actually can then use these kind of content graph, content federation approaches. Again, you would use caching to kind of technically create a duplication, but not in a logical sense. Yeah, it's also, I think, important the ownership still sits with the original source. Yeah, it's still, this is the single source of truth, and everything else just follows. So in that sense, no content. I think some other vendors really go for more like a content hub, where it really follows that I copy the data from there to my own data, and then I can more easily ship it. Yeah, maybe, but again, you will easily run into all these update problems.
Well, as soon as we do that duplication, I mean, you mentioned it goes stale, but also when we're talking about autonomy between our teams, if we have a team that maybe is doing product ingredients and there's a product ingredient database, if I copy that over, I have to trust my marketing team to not edit that. They can't edit it if it always lives over there in a single point of truth.
Yeah. And particularly marketing. I mean, I know that because, in my previous career, I worked in a very marketing-oriented company. Your marketeers won't. I mean, there's no way they let you own that data. Yeah, if it's there, just imagine you're bringing out product information about, say, a major consumer brand, whatever. Then they want to own it. Yeah, there's no way. You may read it, but nothing else. You don't change a single pixel. So duplicating and then no. I mean, that's not going to happen. So that's why this idea of more like dynamic, again, footnote, of course, there could be some caching, whatever. So technical means in terms of performance, but logically, there's no duplication.
And just as a quick follow-up, and I'll answer this one, Tim mentioned something about cache, and we do have a TTL, and it is actually not a global TTL on that. It's actually per field. And so that means that with the caching, you can cache each data point per field, which means that your price information can be at a 60-second TTL, and your ingredient information that almost never changes can be at the max TTL. And then we cache those for you at that individual level, which I think is a really nice feature.
Actually, I had exactly that with a customer last week, where they were exactly speaking about ingredients. And of course, I mean, ingredients can easily, fetch it once a day. That's totally, what could go wrong with it? Yep. So that's and that's why I also keep the load on the original PIM system low to not to not blow it up, and then you can use TTL on that field level. Yes, exactly.
And that's always top of mind for me, because actually Tim has a starter, which is all about cosmetics, and the cosmetics have ingredients that are pulled from a third-party API. So that's always top of mind for me. So I see that the questions are starting to slow down. I do want to mention a couple things. This is a recorded talk, and we will be putting it up on YouTube. So if you are here later as a YouTube viewer, first, thanks for watching. Second, come join the community and get your question answered in there, right? So not only are we taking feedback in the community around all of this, but if you had a really spicy question that you wanted to ask us and you couldn't because you couldn't come today, that's perfectly fine. I know that in Europe that we're at like 5 or 6 p.m. and maybe on the West Coast you're just starting your day in Pacific time. So be sure to ask us your question in slack.hygraph.com, and we're also going to be taking, again, all that product feedback. We're specifically looking for it. We want to collaborate with you. We want to bring that together as well. And as we're winding down, and I see Tim's got another question, which I might talk about here in a second, but I do want to go ahead and promo tomorrow. Tomorrow is our big developer experience presentation. We're going to be hearing from our product management team with Alexi and with Fabian, and also we're going to be talking about the updates coming to the documentation, because there are changes in the studio that affect documentation, and we're slowly rolling those out as well and keeping those separate from our current documentation. And so Romina, our amazing senior technical writer, is going to be talking about that as well tomorrow. So be sure to come join us. I believe we have in the chat right now the message about how to register for that. I think it's going to be a really great conversation to highlight a lot of this. And just as a real fast point, let's take Tim's last question here. When we talk about Studio, what performance enhancements were made for the new Studio release on the back end, and honestly on the front end too?
Yeah, actually quite a lot. Yeah, I mean, maybe when I go in terms of how we shipped it, how we delivered it already. What was it? 2 months ago, we actually shipped our regional management server deployment. So basically meaning that, particularly when you're in a different area of the world, say you're in Australia, then of course going to a server that sits in Frankfurt or wherever might not be the fastest thing because of latency and all of that. So that's why now we basically shipped already, and that it has already been rolled out, has been live now for 2 months. We shipped that so that this information sits locally in your local area, in your local region, and significantly, it really boosts performance a lot. So that's one thing. Then there are a lot of things that are related to caching. So really improved caching. So for example, more fine-grained document-based caching, other things. So basically, in the end, improving performance by increasing the cache hit ratio in the end, so that will result in faster delivery because you can more often grab the content from the cache itself. And then also actually in the front end itself, just by the pure architecture, by the very architecture that we adopted now, and that is completely new with Studio. That's why also it's this kind of big bang release. Yeah, we couldn't just use it field by field or component by component because it's really complete new architecture. The architecture itself is much more targeted towards performance. And I can tell you, Michael, who we listened to earlier, is very, very, very keen on that. And, I would say every millisecond counts. It's like that. So it's really very, very, he's very keen on that and optimizing a lot. And we are kind of squeezing a lot here and seeing how we can improve. So there's a lot of these, some of them big, like RMS or say document-based caching, some of them very small, but in the end, they will come together and have a massive impact on performance.
And if you are curious about diving deep into that, that is one of our big panels next week, which is going to be with 4 of our engineers on various product teams. It's going to be March 27th, and it's going to be Tim hosting these lovely folks to talk about the architecture changes, talk about the technology behind it. We switched, frameworks on a few different ways. We're going to go real deep into all of that. It is not meant for the faint of heart. It is meant for the super technical people that really want to know those granular details.
Actually, I should have refused to answer to that question and refer to the session because they are much better. They are the experts of that, not me.
They're going to be super nerdier about it. It's going to be great, and literally all your granular questions can get answered then. So yeah, I think it seems like we're winding down over there. So again, first, Mario, thanks for taking all the questions today, and thanks for the insights provided in the keynote. And then thank you everyone for coming in. I noticed multiple people from our Slack community in the chat already, and I appreciate all of you being here. And we are, not to harp on it, taking your feedback at slack.hygraph.com. So sign up for the event tomorrow. Come try out the beta and come give us whatever feedback you've got on how the beta is working for you. And with that, I think we can say thank you, and we'll see you in the community.
See you there.